If you're wondering how to build out your Blackmagic handheld camera, this is the video for you. My name is McKean, and today I'm joined with Fraser.
Yep.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for being here.
Yep.
So excited that we get to do this. Every single time that we get to sit down, work on a training video, I'm pumped.
I'm pumped.
Because we get to use this gear all the time,
Yep.
and there's some people out there who either want to use this gear or they have this gear, but they don't know the best way to use it.
For sure.
So I'm excited to share with you guys exactly the best way to go about using your gear. So let's go ahead and get into it. Today we're talking about the Blackmagic Pocket 6K. So we've used this a lot. We've used this at our Snohomish campus. We've used this at our Seattle campus. We've used it a bit actually here at the Kirkland campus. We're shooting this video right now on Pocket 6Ks.
Yeah.
We actually have one Pocket 4K that we just had when I came in, when I showed up. And so we made use of that. But the rest of what we have are Pocket 6Ks and I think a couple Pros as well. And so we love them, great cameras. I've done a ton of research on these cameras. Like what kind of camera is the best bang for your buck? What kind of camera is gonna have the lenses that you want and the adapters and the mounts and the batteries and everything? It's the Pocket 6Ks. And honestly, this is not new information. If you've been around the church video world for any amount of time, you know that the Pocket 6K is probably the most used camera in the whole industry. I mean, that and PTZs. So for this, what we want to do today is share with you a little bit of what our setup is, how we've spent years cultivating the best camera setup for handheld, and how you can use it as well. So let's just get into it.
Let's do it.
Is there anything that you want to share before we start?
Yeah, this is the first handheld camera that I ever used here at the Pursuit for sure. And this is basically what I learned and started on. So it's really cool to break it down.
Yeah, exactly. And it's great that we still use it too.
Yeah.
Like we use red Komodos as well, and we'll make a video on that too, just talking about what the red Komodo is, like how we use it, our whole setup, what we would do differently.
Yep.
And we'll talk about this too a little bit, just the things that I would change if we had a budget to start over. But for the most part, I feel like that this is the best that we're gonna get out of this camera, this rig, and this setup for a handheld setup, for worship mainly is what we use it for.
For sure.
For sure. Okay, great. So let's get into it. So here's what we're gonna do. I am going to talk about the camera setup that we have, and you're gonna watch Keegan take it apart and break it down. And as he takes off each part of the camera rig, we're gonna talk about why we use that piece, why it's so important, and if we would get a better one for the future. So let's go ahead and start with it. Let's start with the lens. Lens is a great place to start. So what we have here is the Sigma 24-70 2.8.
Yeah.
So it's a great camera. Yeah, you can go ahead and start. So it's a great camera lens. I like it a lot because it has image stabilization. And to be honest, we'll talk about this more in the red breakdown, but we don't have lenses with image stabilization on them for our reds. And that to me is a little bit of a miss, just looking back and seeing a lot of the stuff that we shoot with them and a lot of the handheld stuff and how our cam ops have to go for so long on stage. We don't have backpack rigs. It's all handheld. The cameras are heavy, but everyone does a really great job making it work. But what I love about this lens right here is that it has image stabilization in it. Now, the one thing I will say I don't like about this lens is the fact that it pops out when you zoom. When you go to 70, it pops out. The only reason I don't like that is because we use our glass guitar slides. That's almost like a trade secret for Pursuit to get our style, to get our look. And unfortunately, when you pop this out, it makes it a lot harder to use those guitar slides. It's mainly for when we're in the Seattle campus, but for this one, it's still a great lens. I love the image stabilization. I love how fast that the iris is. I would say that the lens zooming out is the one drawback. So if I had to get another lens, I would get one that's exactly like it without that zoom out feature. So the monitor is not fancy. It's probably the cheapest thing you can get out of this whole system. Not the cheapest comparatively to like the cables and stuff, but compared to other monitors we could get, it is the cheapest. It's a Feelworld monitor. I think it's the F6, if I'm correct. I learned that there are multiple Feelworld monitors around the same price point that do not have a thread on the bottom. I think it's a 3/8 inch thread. They don't have it on the bottom, and it only has it on the side. So I think that this is super funny. We have accidentally bought a couple of the ones with just the side ones, and I realized the ones with the thread on the bottom, you have to get.
For sure.
And so for powering this thing, we'll just throw a battery onto the back, at least for our Seattle setup.
Yep.
But for our Snohomish setup, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a dummy battery with DTap that goes into the battery itself that powers the camera.
Yep.
Yeah, and so that's great. It's really nice to have one of these, but I will say that we don't need it. We actually don't need a monitor if you get the Pocket 6K Pro for handheld because it has the monitor that kind of like tilts out.
I agree.
And you don't need it.
Yeah.
So this adds extra weight. It adds an extra need for a battery. And it is not the absolute best thing you could have, but if you don't have the 6K Pro, I would recommend having an external monitor, or else you're just trying to like look at your shot while you're holding it all the way down here, and it makes it a lot harder.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the battery itself. It's a specific battery that I like a lot because it has DTap on the back. It is a Vmount battery. We don't use it for Vmount, but it has DTap and USB power, which is really nice because sometimes we've used the USB power to power the converter itself.
Yep.
So that's always been really great to have just because you have all these options to be able to power your whole camera setup off one battery, and one battery does last us all the way through worship.
It does.
So that's really nice to be able to have. It's not a heavy battery at all. It's not like these other chunky ones that we use on the Reds. This one's really light. It mounts onto the handle, and let's go ahead and talk about the handle too.
Yep.
The handle, it is a NATO handle with a NATO rail that mounts onto the cage on the Pocket. Yep. So it's almost like the battery goes on the handle, which goes on the rail, which goes on the cage. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like we almost have a bunch of different parts, but the reason why we have that, and I've shot weddings literally for years, and I've learned that this is the way to go. You don't want your battery on top of the camera. You don't want it up here because then it's gonna block your buttons, it's gonna block your functions, your power, your record button, and you don't want it on the bottom because when you're going handheld, it's almost gonna be pushing your arm down and you're gonna be reaching for that lens, and that's not what you want. So what I've found works best is you get the NATO, you put the battery on the NATO handle itself, and then you clamp it to the camera, and it kind of almost stabilizes the weight a little bit. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
It stabilizes the weight a little bit. It frees up room for your arm to go underneath the camera to kind of like set it on there to be able to adjust the lens, and then, but also it clamps on and it has its own space as well. So I personally really like that, and I will say that I would not get a different type of battery. I feel like this is the best battery that we've used. I wouldn't say the same about the Reds. Like I wouldn't use this on a Red because it wouldn't last as long just because of the wattage, 47 watt. So the ones we have I think are like 150. So the ones we have literally last for hours, and this is good to last you for like probably a solid worship set.
Yeah.
So that's why this is good. The Smallrig NATO handle you can get on Amazon for pretty cheap. You have to get this little rail piece too. You don't have to take that off, but you do need that as the attachment to get the handle onto the camera body.
For sure.
We're using some Kondor Blue HDMI jumpers to go from our camera into a bidirectional converter. Now here's the thing about the bidirectional converter. You only need it if you're running an external monitor. If you're not running the external monitor, you can go an HDMI to SDI Blackmagic converter. We also have the little hot shoe rail on the bottom, and that slides on perfectly for our Pocket 6K cage. So the fact that that can just slide on the top, we have gaff covering the top one because in the past we've plugged it into the wrong one and we've gone, oh, we actually don't need this. So that's another reason why the bidirectional wouldn't be as great to have, is because we plug it into the wrong one, or if a cam op volunteer who doesn't know fully what they're doing is plugging into the wrong one, you don't know why there's picture. Why there isn't picture, you have to go through and you have to troubleshoot, and it's just better to do the HDMI to SDI Blackmagic 3G converter. You're not gonna need more than that. For sure. Unless you're using the monitor.
Yep. So we have for the battery, we have a dummy battery going into the camera. So 2 HDMIs for the converter. One to go into converter to the camera, then one go into from the converter into the monitor.
Yep.
And then we have a USB-C to USB-C to power from the camera to the...
And that's the really nice thing, is that the camera itself, the USB, can power the converter. The only problem that we've ran into is when we want to capture ISO footage from like a worship set, and we want to plug in our like our Samsung T5. We can't have both because there's only one USB-C, so we have to choose either, okay, are we using this USB-C out for our Samsung, and then how are we getting power to the converter? And that's the nice thing, is that you go USB-C to USB-A cable, and you can plug straight in to your Edge battery, and then you can just power that straight off there. The reason why we don't have that on 24/7 is because when we take off the battery, you have to unplug it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just one more step, and really the whole process in this is figuring out, okay, how do you make this as simple as possible so a volunteer can walk in, they can grab the camera, they can put on a battery and just go.
For sure.
Because sometimes, listen, it's true, it happens. Volunteers sometimes show up late. Sometimes they don't fully know what they're doing and you only have a little bit of time to train. So when the camera itself is ready to go, we actually, the way you see it right now with all the parts littered around the table, that is not normal. We leave our cameras set up. The only thing we'll ever do is we'll take off the lens and we'll cover it, and then put the battery on the charger. Other than that, everything else stays together, it stays the same. And I think this is pretty much it, right? We've got our magic arm, obviously, for the monitor if you need that. And then the cage as well, which is a Smallrig. And the one thing I love about this is that it's got the Allen wrench inside of the cage. And Smallrig will do that all the time. It just magnetizes right in. So if you want to take off the cage or you want to tighten it at any point, you can literally just take out the Allen wrench, tighten it up, and then drop it right back in. You don't have to worry about looking for tools. So go ahead and start to rebuild that just the way that we would. And again, this is how we would set it up if we were trying to figure, okay, like this is what we have, this is what works, this is what we like. But again, I'll say that it's not the 110% best, most efficient rig that we could possibly get. It's pretty close, and we've done a lot of good with what we have. I think altogether, how many pockets would you say we have over the entirety of all of our campuses?
Oh, it's gotta be more than 12, right?
It's probably around 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you total it all up. So the fact that we have 15 of these cameras, which is just wild at this point. I mean, we use all of them on a weekly basis. It's not like any of these are sitting in a case. We do not have extra lenses. We have just the right amount of lenses for all of our cameras. We're either using these for our live host segment, our worship sets, our other campuses, our youth setup, pretty much everywhere we can. I mean, the Pocket's just like, it's the step up from anything else that you might have, whether it's the PTZ or webcam or anything like that.
Yep.
And here's the funny thing, I'll share a fun story. We had a Pocket, when I started here, it was almost 2 years ago at this point, which is super crazy. When I started, we had a camera that had a broken screen on the back. Literally, you could not see anything. Like 2/3 of it was totally smashed. I don't know what happened or what the story was. Did you know? Did you ever find out?
I wasn't there when.
So that was even, okay, yeah, at a different time. So I didn't know what to do. So I was like, okay, let's definitely find a purpose for this because I don't want to just throw the camera out, and it's not like people are gonna buy a broken camera. Maybe someone would, but I'm like, it still sends a signal to video, so I'm like, let's try it. So I set that camera up in the balcony in Seattle as a wide shot, almost like kind of a crow's nest camera. And I love it because I was able to set it up, leave it on 24/7. And I was like, listen, it's already a broken camera. If it dies or if it goes out, then that's it. That's just what's gonna happen. But we will at least have used it and I will have learned how long a Pocket will stay on for and how long you can leave it on before it dies. The funny thing about that story is that I think it's been on now. It's been on since August of 2023.
Yep.
And it is still on to this day.
It is still on.
That is hilarious to me because I did not expect it to live this long, but it has just stayed on. I will say there was one time when it needed to be pixel remapped because Jason told us, he's like, hey, I'm seeing some like white fuzzy pixels in the picture. So I just went up to the crow's nest, pixel remapped it, and then it was good to go after that. So I will say that other than that, it has stayed on 24/7. And has been really nice because if we ever need a remote in for an event or like we just need a camera shot or wide of the room, we have access to that. So that's just a fun little story. Just know that we do not take responsibility if your Pocket dies from leaving it on for too long, but we have found that ours stay on and we love it because it makes life a lot easier just to be able to have cameras that are always on to always capture an event. So that's our handheld rig. That's pretty much all that I have. Was there anything else that you wanted to add?
Nothing much. You pretty much covered all of it.
I feel like I did. I did a lot of talking in this one. Sorry about that. I'll let you talk for the next one some more. We do have a Komodo building video that we want to also share, so make sure to check that one out. Share this video. We know that Pockets are not the #1 camera that are in, but we do feel like this video has a lot of weight and would hopefully help you and help some of your friends to be able to have the best church production setup that you can have, especially on a budget. That's number one.
Especially.
So anyway, that's all we got. Make sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate you sitting down with us. And Keegan, I appreciate you sitting down with me.
For sure.
This has been great, and we'll see you all in the next video.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.